was the water that just pulls out, right? Because that's what happens with a tsunami or just a wave, right? The water pulls out to then come back. So in Thailand, all the locals and stuff, they start running to go see where the water went. And it was the weirdest sight because there was just, sand and like rocks and fish and people running to see where the water went.
Aloha, and welcome to the Sick Brain Podcast, where we explore the bright side of life's darkest moments. Today, we're thrilled to have Christelle Ambr with us. She's a writer, speaker, coach, and a survivor with a story that inspires resilience and transformation. From surviving the 2004 tsunami in Indonesia to overcoming challenges with addiction, Christelle has not only reshaped her life, but now helps others understand the dynamics of masculine and feminine energy. So please enjoy this inspiring journey and the wisdom of Christelle Ambr. So I got to meet you based on social media, and I saw your post on Instagram. And when people say, oh, nothing good ever happens on social media and the internet, I can point to meeting you. I think of you as a friend and truthfully, just this wonderful inspiration out there. Do you want to talk a little bit about us meeting and that video that you posted where, I commented and then you talked about your PTSD?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. The 26th of December, 2024, that was the 20-year anniversary of the tsunami that happened back in 2004 in Asia. It was a pretty big tsunami. And, every year on that date, I don't do anything per se, but I just commemorate it, right? And it's like a rebirth day for me because it's obviously a lot of people died, and obviously it was one of the traumas that I've been through. And so I felt like I wanted to do a little something for that on social media, but I didn't want to just post for the sake of posting, because now with posting on social media, it's like I want to be intentional and I want to see how I can add value to other people, right? It's not just about oh, this is, about me and all that stuff. No, it's like, how can I actually bring value to my content? So I was like, okay, the tsunami, obviously surviving something like that is, yes, it brought, all the trauma and everything that ensued after that. But as we've also spoken before, it was, a great source of growth, of lessons and all of that. So I just kind of brainstormed and I was like, okay, let me think about the lessons around trauma and PTSD that I got from that. And I don't know, I just created this very short reel. I honestly, my intention with it wasn't for it to go viral. I just wanted to share a little bit about how I coped with something like that, just, in hopes that it would help maybe one person or maybe just have a bit of a change of perspective around trauma, because we often hear the same, the same things around trauma, around PTSD, how to recover from it, go to therapy, this and that.
Right. It's the same typical advice that you get, but you're like, but that is not necessarily what I'm experiencing. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but yeah, maybe that's how you felt.
Yeah. And I just wanted to bring a little bit of just a little different perspective, around that. And so, for example, I'm just bringing it up here. The second point that I put in the caption is that it's not the events that shape our lives. So it's not the actual tsunami itself that shaped my life, but it's the belief that I created about the meaning of that event.
Right.
So I'll repeat it. It's not the events that shape our lives, but the beliefs we create about the meaning around those events. And it's because realistically, that tsunami, I met one of my childhood best friends over there. She survived it as well.
Oh, wow. Is that why you were there? To meet her on a trip?
No. I mean, because, don't forget, I was 9, right? I was 9 at the time, but we were in the same school in Singapore, and her family went to Thailand, Phuket, for the holidays, and I went there with my dad, and I'll give you the story and the context in a second. And just, we met there, and then we ended up, becoming best friends until now. And it's just, she didn't seem that affected by it, I mean, from what she tells me, I don't know, I'm not in her head. And so I just realized that, okay, yeah, it's really all about perspective. What might be super freaking traumatic to me might not be to someone else who experienced the same incident or the same event. So it's all about the meaning and the beliefs that we create and that we choose to continue believing around that. It's at the end of the day, I mean, I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson, as much as I'm a woman, I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson, and especially his studies around like meaning,
Yeah.
and it's true, whatever we give meaning to in our lives is what we're going to believe. So how are we like, yeah, let me just put that out first.
Yeah. Well, I will say, that really spoke to me, as somebody who was diagnosed with PTSD also, the way that you wrote about it in that video, I mean, it really spoke to me. How many people actually comment on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok videos? Like, it takes a lot for you to put the energy in to say something. And it just spoke to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like she gets it. This is a perfect description of the way I have internalized my PTSD. And you're right. I had to change this perspective about the meaning of my accident too. And I think it's one of the only reasons why I'm here sitting today and maybe doing as good as I am. It's because I had to shape the meaning around this traumatic accident. And you saying that, I was like, yes. There's a part where you also say, it doesn't affect everybody the same. And I completely agree with you too. Like I always say, I don't compare my trauma to anybody else's because I don't know what they experienced. Maybe, them skinning their knee when they were riding their bike as a kid is the most traumatic thing that ever happened. And it hits them in this way that just totally affects them the rest of their life. And so I just feel like I could completely relate to that. And I just was instantly drawn to your profile and then your work. And then we started communicating. And then you have this wonderful podcast, Ambr Talks, and I get to be on it. And we have another wonderful conversation. So yes, your message totally spoke to me, but I don't want to get too far ahead. Yeah, take me back to more of what you were saying about this traumatic incident.
Yeah. And also, just something came to my mind before I get into that. Have you read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl?
I have, yes. That is an incredible book about taking one of the worst situations of all time, being in a concentration camp in Auschwitz, and looking at it from a positive lens. That's part of the reason I'm so inspired to talk about this. Like, if Viktor Frankl can do that, man, what can't I do? And so what do you think about it?
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. That's all I wanted to put out there. And, to anyone who's listening and who's, perhaps struggling to find meaning or see the silver lining or see, like what could possibly be the opportunity out of something so dark. Well, there are like true inspirational stories out there of people that have been through, atrocious things. Once again, not comparing, but yeah, that book is really like just a nugget. It's been a nugget in my journey for sure.
Yeah. So you go through this crazy experience. How do you know that you have PTSD about it? How do you know that this is something that has been affecting you your whole life?
Right. So, oh gosh, it's been so interesting about like this particular event, right? The tsunami, because it's only in recent years, and I'm 30 now, and that happened when I was like 9 or 10. So it's been a couple of decades now,
Mhm.
and it's only recently that I actually understood the impact of it. Right, in hindsight, I was like, oh my god, this is how it actually affected my whole entire life up till today. And I feel like I need to give a little bit of context, not only because I'm a woman and we love context, but just because there's actual context to this, in
Yeah.
the sense that my first 10 years on earth, like there was, well, actually, I feel like my whole life so far has been made up of like compounded trauma. Now, I don't know if that's an actual psychological concept, but it's something that I've made up because it makes sense. So it's
Right.
like there's been multiple traumatic events that made it such that, the the person I am today is like a mix of all of those. And so
Right.
leading up to the tsunami, and I'm giving context because then that will shape like the rest of the conversation. Um, in brief, I was born in Singapore. So I'm originally from Singapore and I'm half French. And actually, like after I was born, a year later, my parents gave, well, I had a brother Like my mom gave birth to my brother,
Mhm.
and he died after 7 days. So I had a baby brother, and he survived, 7 days. And that I never thought it like would have impacted me in any way, shape, or form, because I mean, I was a baby, he was a baby, but I realized that it obviously impacted my parents, right, on a huge way.
Right.
And that that me being a 1-year-old, I obviously was an emotional sponge. And so that was kind of like my, not kind of, that was my first like experience with trauma already at 1 years old, because, well, brother dying, parents going through grief, parents going through, I don't know what they went through, but it obviously mustn't have been easy. And then the unfolding of all of that was that my father apparently couldn't cope very well with that. I can only imagine how difficult it must have been. And so he started cheating on my mom. And eventually, the year of the tsunami, so in 2004, my parents actually got divorced earlier that year.
Oh
Okay.
my God.
So
Yeah.
2004, parents get divorced. I'm like 9 or 10. I don't understand anything about what the fuck a divorce is, right? Like, I'm like, oh my God, my dad's not going to be living with us anymore. Like, I don't understand. I was young. I was, this very cute little girl, like very shy and timid, and then heartbroken, because of that. And so my dad at the time, to, I guess cheer me up, or at least, yeah, brought me on our first father-daughter holiday, which was for Christmas, to Phuket, Thailand. And then the tsunami happens. So, that year, that was already back-to-back trauma for me.
Right. There's like
And
already things stacking up. It's like you weren't even, I mean, it's probably in some ways impossible to really fathom what's going on and consciously look at these situations. But whether it's the loss of your brother and now your dad and your parents getting divorced, and then you go through this traumatic thing, and there's like other traumas that lead up to the bigger one, and then it affects you forever going forward, and probably even how you process the big traumatic incident like the tsunami.
exactly. And the mind, not only the mind, but the subconscious mind, like everything we have between our two ears is such a fascinating thing. It's such a fascinating machine. It's so fascinating because the way it processes things and links things and all that, it's just like, honestly, we have like one of the most powerful things sitting in between our ears right now. But
Yeah.
anyways, so what happened is that yeah, we went on this holiday, and every time I tell the story, I always give a little disclaimer that I don't remember everything in a linear sequence. I will only tell the flashbacks of memory that I have, because obviously my brain, wiped out a lot of it, and I was 10 at the time. So
Yeah, no,
my brain,
that's such a common thing. Yeah, even for me with my accidents, like now spots, at first it was so vivid, but now it's like spotty and it's almost not
exactly.
even linear. So yes, I think that's a very common thing with PTSD.
Right. So I just remember the morning of, so the 26th in the morning, my dad and I, we had woken up like relatively early because we wanted to go to the beach in the morning, like super early in the morning. So this is where, there's grace, there's God, there's higher power, whatever you want to call it. I really believe in that now. Because something made us go for breakfast first instead of going straight to the beach. So we went for breakfast.
Wow.
And basically the way it was laid out was that the where we were sitting for breakfast was on a terrace overlooking the sea. So we weren't on ground level. We were on a terrace, but it was like overlooking the beach, like literally overlooking the sea. And I don't, this is where obviously things get a little blurry, but one of the first things that I remember from that morning is there was the water that just pulls out, right? Because that's what happens with a tsunami or just a wave, right? The water pulls out to then come back. And so all of a sudden, the water just pulls out, but like far, nothing like I think anyone's ever seen before. And don't forget, this is like 20 years ago. So we didn't have the technological advances that we do now. And we also, like, people weren't as educated as they are today. So in Thailand, all the locals and stuff, they start running to go see where the water went. And it was the weirdest sight because that was just well, sand and like rocks and fish and people running to see where the water went. So they were running towards the sea.
Oh,
And then the next thing I remember seeing or hearing was just like this extremely loud thundering noise, but like nothing I've ever heard in my life. It was so loud, like, and everything was, shaking. And it was just, it wasn't, I can't come, I wouldn't know how to describe it to you because I had never heard something like that in my life. And I've never heard anything like that after because it was just so loud.
wow.
And just like in the distance, you could just see like one line, like, one dark line, and that was the wave.
Mhm.
And it just happened so fast, Thomas. Like I honestly, like, my brain, it like happened too fast for my brain to process, right? Which is often what happens in these situations.
Right.
And it, next thing you know, there's just like people screaming and the thundering of the wave crashing and like, pure chaos explodes. And fight or flight mode, I just take off. Like, I remember running. That's the one thing I remember doing is I just start running out of the restaurant, and my dad is like behind me, running behind me. And he's telling me in French, he's like, Christelle, like, stop running, like, wait for me. But I'm in survival mode at this point, right? And I'm just like running for my dear fucking life. And this scene, I do remember, I'm running and I turn around to see where my dad was.
Yeah.
And there was like the seawater that was coming into the grounds of the hotel. Like the seawater had come in, and it was just like, yeah, I think my dad eventually like grabbed me or something. And then I don't remember exactly what happened. But that was kind of the first scene.
Yeah.
Then there was like, I don't know how much time passed, but there was obviously like an emergency meeting with all the hotel guests or whatever. And this is the second scene I remember is we were sitting in, I don't know, some kind of space, and I was sitting down, and by this time my friend and her family were also around. So like we had regrouped her family and my family. I mean, it was just me and my dad. And we were kind of waiting for us to be told what was happening, what's happening next, like what's
What do we do?
Yeah, exactly. And in that moment, I remember hearing that noise again, and I blacked out. I just blacked out. I went black. And then next thing, when I kind of came to, it was the second wave that hit, and that was like, okay, we had to leave. We had to evacuate. And so next thing I remember is a really brief conversation I had with my mom on the phone. I don't remember what she said, but I just remember she was crying. And that was the time for us to leave the hotel. And I don't know if I was going to speak to my mom ever again, or, what was that about? And so we left the hotel and we started walking up this like hill mountain thingy. And another scene that I remember was just like looking back and just like it, like what you see on, on the internet is just the sheer destruction, the trees, the destruction of, wood and houses and water everywhere.
Yeah.
I remember that. It was just so like, I don't know, like nothing I could have ever imagined.
Yeah. So
and then eventually
in your head, it's just shock. Then you're just purely like, you can't even fathom probably what you're looking at, right? Can you remember what you're feeling at this moment?
It was a new feeling. That's what I can say for sure. I mean, already at the age of 10, you haven't experienced that much of a wide variety of feelings compared to being 30, right?
Yeah.
But it was definitely a new feeling that I hadn't felt before. And if I had to put words to it, it was definitely like fear was 100% there. It must have been like confusion because I didn't know what the fuck a tsunami was, right? Like I didn't know.
Yeah.
Fear, confusion, probably like, I don't know what the word is for, but like survival, like really just, what's another word for beyond fear? Petrified? Terrified?
Yeah, terrified. I think that's a great word. I mean, it's the word that I use when describing my accident. It's just pure terror, and it's like one of those feelings you kind of hope nobody feels to the extent that I think you have. And yeah, but I think that fusion and that scared, but yeah, I think the terror is probably the best word you can use to describe it. So yeah, sorry for making you go there, but I was just wanted to get into your head a little bit because now what I think you've realized about it is so different than what you were thinking about, how you were feeling about it as a 9-year-old.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And you know what? Like, this is true about what they say about healing, or at least for me, in that time has been necessary for me, because now there's 20 years between the tsunami and myself. I'm able to look back at it and not have that, like, that feeling that I used to have, that was so intense. But for example, what happened a few years ago when I was in my active addictions, and with um, this one guy I was dating, like that, now my brain associates that much more to terror than the tsunami. But it's just because of the lapse of time. I'm guessing. I might be wrong, but
Right.
this is just analysis, which I'll get to also at some point. But yeah, just to wrap up on the tsunami story. So that yeah, I just didn't know what the fuck was going on. And basically that night we had to spend it on top of this mountain. We were in some kind of like a temple or a school or something. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And the it was rough, man. It was complicated because every hotel guest like room, we were given like one roll of toilet paper, one piece of bread, one blanket, one bottle of
Wow.
water,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really just like survival mode. And you see people's true colors there. Like, I would have thought people would be, a little more in the concept of union, but people were just stealing shit from one another. It
Oh
was
my
rough. Like,
gosh.
people were stealing from one another. And um I remember, like, obviously we didn't sleep much that night. And my dad, bless his soul, he passed away 8 years ago now, but he was someone with, I wouldn't say influence, but he had connections. Let's put it that way back then. So I don't know who he was calling or what he did, but he managed to get us on a flight the next day out. And like I said, I don't know how he did that. Resources probably helped, right, at the time, and I'm very grateful that my dad was that type of a person. And so yeah, after a really rough night, and this is where my brain also shut off a lot of memories, is because coming back to the hotel the next day for us to get our luggage and whatever,
Yeah.
I feel like I remember my dad telling me, don't look up, like, don't, like, keep your eyes down, don't look up. And
Oh
obviously you
wow.
tell that to a kid, you're going to look up, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think I remember seeing, things that no one should really see, um,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of, yeah, just, people that were extremely hurt, lifeless, bodies and stuff like that. I don't have the vivid memory of it, but I definitely, it's coming slowly back.
Right.
Um, and then the airport, that was another just like absolutely horrible scene that I wouldn't wish on my worst, enemy. It was just chaos. It was just hurt. People were so hurt, like, not only emotionally, but like physically hurt.
Mm.
And then I don't remember much of that, but I just remember it was really, really just horrible. And then we came back to Singapore, and I don't also remember reuniting with my mom. I don't know why my brain shut that off.
Wow. That's an interesting one in some ways for me, because it's like we're so nervous about not seeing her, and then I don't know what the relationship was like with your mom at that time, but it feels like it was one of those things where it'd be like you obviously remember, because it's like, yeah, I'm seeing mom again and she loves me and all those things. But yeah, actually, now that you say that, it's like I can't really remember the first time I saw my family coming out of like the medically induced coma either. Like I don't really, yeah. I mean, I remember flashes of seeing family members, but you're right. I have not thought about that. Like that first time I saw them again after waking up. Interesting. Yeah, maybe it's just, yeah, I don't know. Do you have a theory as to why that is?
You know what? I really don't know. I've never thought of
Yeah,
it.
I'm right there with you. It's not something I thought about either. But when you were saying that, I'm like, gosh, it seems like something you should obviously remember, because it's like, you finally have this person with you that really cares about you and loves you, and you just went through this traumatic thing. But I can't remember that first time seeing them either. That's a really interesting thing. It'd be nice to talk to, some mental health professional as to like why we don't remember.
Yeah. May I ask you a question
Of
about
course.
that moment for you?
Sure. Yeah.
Um, do you remember what were the first thoughts that came to you when you first woke up from that coma?
Oh man. So I can tell you what I was thinking when I was dreaming because I was stuck in these just dreams and they were horrific. They were just, I mean, when people say nightmare fuel, like I was just in the nightmare, you know? So it was constantly being fueled. And when I woke up, all of a sudden, all the actual pain, like the physical pain started setting in. And I was like, oh my God, I messed up. Like I just knew my body was ruined in some way. And it was just this really just that already starts, getting your anxiety up and your heart's pounding. But then I couldn't move and everything was bandaged. And I'm like, I've always said kind of one of my biggest fears is is claustrophobia, is being in tight spaces. So all of a sudden I can't move. My body's not working. I'm in immense amount of pain and I can't see anybody's face. So when you're burned in it and you have that many open wounds, you have to be in a completely sterile environment. So now I don't, people are coming in and I don't know who they are. I can kind of recognize or hear my parents' voices, but it just doesn't feel comforting, right? Like it doesn't feel comfortable. Everybody's in these masks and gowns and scalp things and so it was just, to your point, it was just complete confusion. It was terror. And then this realization of like, oh my gosh, your life is over. Like you just lost like that idea of like, holy crap, I just lost everything in a moment. So that's kind of the closest thing I can remember. But one of the earliest memories I have kind of waking up was a nurse was like, hey, do you know what date it is? And my accident happened on September 7th. And so I figured maybe it was like later September. Like I had an idea I was probably out for a few days. And I think I was like, oh, it's September 10th. And they were like, no, it's October 15th. And then that realization I had lost so much time really just shocked me. I was like, oh my God, what happened that I was out for a month and some change? And that freaked me out. It completely freaked me out. So I think that was, that's as close as I can get to like kind of remembering that feeling of, of waking up now.
And if this is too much, just let me know. But do you remember the first time that you were able to like look at your body, whether it just be looking at it or in the mirror? Do you remember that moment?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, again, I was burned. I've been quoted from like 60 to 73% of my body, second, third degree burns. And there was a time, so this was one of the biggest fears. And one thing I haven't really talked about publicly, but I'm okay about it. I'm okay about it. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. But so I had to get dressing changes every other day or, at least, I think every other day or every day or something like that. So they would peel off all of this, all the bandages and then but again, I was so heavily on drugs. I was on every type of heavy pain medication you could think of. I was on this thing called Dilaudid. I was on fentanyl. I was on ketamine. I was on all this stuff and still in so much pain. Couldn't even imagine. But the dressing changes, that was such a painful process because they had to kind of make sure everything was healthy and there wasn't bacteria forming and all that stuff. But I would dread it. I'd shake and I couldn't move my body. I couldn't control anything, but I would shake so bad because I knew how hard and it was going to be and how painful it was going to be. And that seeing all the open areas. And when I tell you like what a change in my body, I was always athletic. I was always fit. And I used to be, embarrassed because I had a scar on my shoulder, when I was trying to surf one day and I was riding my skateboard down and I ate it trying to like go surf and seeing all, again, this is, sorry for everybody listening. That's really graphic, but there was just blood everywhere and there was no mirrors in the room. And so I didn't know physically what I looked like. And I would ask I couldn't talk for a long time either. So this was months down the line. But when I could finally ask, I said, hey, you know what I look like? everybody would tell me, hey, you just look like you have this really bad sunburn. And I was like, okay. So I had this false representation in my mind of what I looked like, but I knew I was messed up. And I saw blood everywhere. And that was very, very shocking. It kind of confirmed some of the thoughts I had about the state I was in. And then you're like, yeah, just was completely broken down from there. But again, I digress. I kind of want to go back to what you were saying. Yeah. Yeah. So, but again, in some ways, what you were saying about what you were experiencing that moment and then that night with all these people around you and just the pure confusion and shock, and your brain isn't, it can't adapt to something so crazy happening on the flip of a switch. It just can't piece it together. So you just start trying to find any semblance of like, how do I make sense of this? Right. And then with your parents and being so young, I'm just sure, I just feel like so, I don't know. I just feel for you so much. And I just feel for your experience. And I think in some ways I'm comforted because I think you get it. And I think we can connect in that way. Like I totally understand where you're coming from and how you can also not remember embracing, a family member, because there's just so much your brain can't process in that moment. It just, you black out, you blank out those memories.
100%. And may I share just something that came to me while you were talking?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, I sometimes get these like visions for people, or channel or whatever you want to call it, and I can just like, I see you, I so see you. Like I just had this beautiful vision of like you speaking on stage, and it's just like I don't know where you're at, but I just what's coming through is that like you're going so far. Like I don't know
Oh,
what that looks like, but it's just that this is like confirmation coming from I don't know who or what out there, but it's like there is absolutely no doubt. Like there is no doubt you are on your way to you know really really big things, because it's literally like individuals like you that shape the world. Like
thank you.
and it's not just from me. This is like it's a bigger kind of message. So I just wanted to express that really, like, it's you are so on exactly where you need to be, like 100%.
That, thank you so much. I think that's way too kind. Although TED Talks call me. But
What?
I'm just kidding. No, no, I would love it maybe one day. That also sounds terrifying, but I think it means a lot.
You just manifested it, right?
Yeah, I hope that'd be great. I'm on board with that. But I also, I mean, it just means a lot coming from you and your outlook. And so I think we'll get into it more. I kind of want to hear about some of the other things you had to overcome, but which is mainly what this is about, right? It's like we both experience these crazy traumatic things, but we can't sit there. We can't stay in that mindset. We can't stay in that depression. We have to find ways to carry on and to make meaning out of these traumatic moments, as you beautifully said in that post. And so, yeah, I think I want to kind of maybe start shifting into how do you start moving through life? How do you start coping with it? And how do you start making your own meaning for your life that's brought you into this beautiful place now and able to share a message like me, which I don't think I necessarily deserve, but I also feel connected to you because of everything that you survived and then your outlook now.
100%. 100%. And so once again, I'm just going to give a little bit of context. I'll try and not go on too big of a tangent, but from that event, right, from those first 10 years of life, then things got very turbulent in the sense that my mom and we moved to different countries. My mom was messed up with her own issues, and I fell into addictions at around 13, 14. Okay, so that was from what I understand, a direct result or consequence of all the trauma that I had been through, not realizing that all this, the life and addictions would just be, more trauma added, because my addictions were mainly alcohol and drugs. And getting into, I was living in Bangkok at the time. So Thailand around 13, 14, that's where I got into all of that. And it was dark. It was gross. It was just, I was too young to be exposed to some of the things I was exposed to
Yeah.
again. And that, unfolded into, my late teens. And then I went to university in Paris and early 20s at this point now, I'm into even harder drugs. And it's just like, I had always been the type of person that would like get good grades, like study well. I'm an overachiever, like a high achiever.
Yeah.
So I was a functioning addict for sure.
I mean,
And
I'm surprised to hear that. I didn't know anything about this, but it's like, yeah, I was like, how are you able to do all this and still succeed and get into college and do well in college? Yeah.
I honestly, I don't know, and I'm not. This is just a fact. It's not like my ego talking, but I did a double major in university. I have a double degree in entrepreneurship and international business administration, which is a significant amount of work.
Yeah. Wow.
Working in a bar every single night, and I had developed an addiction to cocaine, and I was just like really full on in this in the addictions. But honestly, I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I did it. All I do know is that there were consequences to all of that, which I went through. And so just to touch upon the addictions part a little bit, I ended up going to rehab when I was 21, actually. And no, I was 20. I was 20. I was 21. I don't know. It doesn't matter. And that was what led me to going to rehab, was also, extremely just so turbulent, so much chaos, so much just, I was really messed up. I was just really messed up as a kid, as a young adult. And as I mentioned, in the world of addictions, or at least my story, there's been dark things that have happened, especially when it comes to men and sexual abuse and all of this. Like that comes as a package, or at least it did for me. And my story in rehab was another shit show. I was just messed up. I didn't know anything. And I actually escaped from rehab, and then they brought me back, and then I get kicked out of rehab. And this is where something else kind of happens. I get kicked out of rehab. I go back to Singapore. I was in rehab in Thailand. I go back to Singapore because my mom was living there at the time. She still does. And basically, about a week after I got kicked out of rehab, my dad died unexpectedly. So this is like,
God.
the timing of the series of kind of like unfortunate events in my life was just like, it felt for me that it was just stacking one after the other. And
Yeah, I can imagine why.
this is going to be a little dark what I'm going to say, but when my dad died, I told myself, okay, I'm done. I'm tired of this shit. I'm tired of this life. I'm tired of, all of this stuff. I said, out of respect for him, I'm going to go to his funeral, to his cremation, and then I'm going to kill myself. And it wasn't the first time that I had, those thoughts, that I had that intention to end my life, because in my whole 10 to 20 is already 10 to 20-year-old, like the decade was already complicated enough. And now I'm 20, and, this shit happens. And I was just like, now looking back, I was in the victim mindset, but I didn't know any other mindset at that age, right? I wasn't into self-development and all this stuff. And so this is where also my path into spirituality started, or my spiritual awakening, or whatever you want to call it, because something changed at some point between the very few months, that where I was going to therapy. I was doing outpatient therapy. I was part of 12-step fellowships. Actually, I don't mind saying it very openly. I was part of AA. I used to go to AA meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's, a little bit of ambiguity about talking about this in public, but I'm not part of it anymore. So I feel okay sharing that I was part of AA back then.
Right.
And, a mix between that and my therapist and like spirituality, I guess. And I just decided, actually, wait, what if I just gave life a chance? What if I didn't kill myself just yet? What if I just gave myself 1 year, see how it is? And if I want to kill myself after a year, then I'll do it.
Right.
And then that's where things shifted for me. I was like, okay, fuck it. Let's give this a chance. And I really gave it my all at, therapy. And like I said, the meetings, and just, exercising, meditation, developing a conscious contact with God or a higher power, whatever you want to call it. And I got back into studying. So I had my degrees, but now I wanted to go into psychology. So I went down that path. I was working a little bit here and there. Like my life actually started going on the uphill. And I was like, wow, like this is great. But one thing, I hadn't yet tackled the tsunami because I had to deal with my dad's death, right? So the
Yeah.
tsunami was still underlying. I was dealing with my dad's death first, and then also which was tied into the addictions. Fast forward, because it would have been too beautiful if, oh, I got sober and that's, I lived happily ever after. No, 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 no. Like that's a
Yeah.
little bit more story. Um, so I was then sober for a little over 2 years, and obviously, if trauma is unresolved, or at least this is just my take on it, and this is my story, my there was some big trauma that wasn't resolved in my story, and um, I ended up drinking again. I ended up drinking again, and I can't blame anyone else but me for that. And I thought it was a conscious decision. I thought I was cured. There was a guy involved, and the whole daddy issues is a whole other topic. But everything linked between the trauma, the dad, the addictions, the relationship with men, like this, everything was all interlinked. And anyways, I
Yeah.
decided to drink again. I moved back to Paris, where I moved in with this guy that I was dating at the time. And basically, I didn't fall back into the addictions like how it was before. I wasn't doing drugs at the time, but I had picked up on drinking, but it wasn't like how it was before. So I really thought I was cured. And the difference is now I'm like 24, 25 at the time. I was in a stable relationship. I was working as a mental health therapist, which is quite ironic. I was in France. I was living with this guy. Next thing you know, life is unfolding. We get engaged. We buy a car together. Like things start really like getting serious.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my god, okay, like I'm becoming an adult. And so things, yeah, things that were just unfolding in that way. And then 2020 happened. And this is another like pivotal point in my life, which I'm sure for a lot of people, right? 2020.
Mhm.
And we were supposed to get married that year, and that didn't happen for many different reasons. It was a blessing in disguise, obviously. But when that separation happened, considering that, we had everything planned for the wedding, paid everything organized. I mean, we were also on the path to trying for a kid. You know what I mean? Like it was like serious
Wow.
life.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like whole new phases of life too.
Exactly. So when all of that came to a halt, and when we decided to separate, and the details are irrelevant, or maybe for another podcast. That's when the whole mindset and the coping mechanisms and all that shitty mindset I had before came back. It was like, oh my god, here's another traumatic event. Oh my god, why is my life so shitty? Like victim mindset came back in, right? I was just
Yeah.
like, I'm so tired of this shit. Like it's like there's so much that keeps happening in my life, but it was just one thing after another. It felt like that anyways.
Sure.
And this was summer 2020. That's where I consciously decided, you know what, fuck it, like this time round I'm done. I'm done, but not in the good sense, not in the done. Going for therapy. No, no, no. It's done. I'm going back into my darkness. I'm going to self-destruct. And I was like, the fuck it button that you sometimes press. Like I just destroyed that shit. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about anything. I'm going. I'm going, and I'm not coming back. And so I bought a one-way ticket to Mexico, went all the way to the other side of the world, and embarked on a very dark journey of self-destruction, like voluntary self-destruction in addictions.
Oh
And
man.
then
Can I just
fast forward.
yeah, I really want to hear what you're having to say, but like I just want to say it would make sense, like all of these things and the way you're trying to figure out how to cope about it. And with all this trauma and all this pain, it seems like I don't think anybody could blame you. I know there's silly people out there, but for me, it's like I couldn't blame you after you having to deal with everything you've dealt with. And, if you don't have a way of seeing a path out of it, it does feel like things just start stacking up. It does feel like, oh, shoot, like this bad thing happened. And now this bad thing happened. You don't see the beautiful moments. You don't see the moments of grace. You don't see the moments of happiness that you got outside of like using substances and stuff like that. Like I never like smoked weed or drank too heavy. Like I definitely partied and stuff before my accident, but it was like it was under control. If I decide I'm not going to drink because I need to be focused for this thing, I could do that. And yeah, I just feel like I completely understand where you're coming from. This self indulgence, like I had never smoked a cigarette before my accident, and after I survived and I was kind of getting back to life. I was like, fuck it. Like, why not? I might never get to again, or I might not, be able to enjoy myself at this level. And so I started smoking a lot more, started drinking a lot more. And it just seemed like, fuck it, why not? It doesn't matter. I might not get the opportunity to ever do this again. And yeah, it wasn't a healthy way to go about it, but it also felt like, well, I deserve this now in some way because of what I went through. Like, I don't know, did
Right.
yeah, did you have that kind of mindset too? Yeah. Did you have that same mindset too?
Yeah, yeah, on one hand I did. And like what I find pretty curious when I self-analyze is that because I had gone, I had been going to AA for so long, I have a fucking master's in addiction studies, so I knew
Wow.
exactly what I was doing, what was happening.
Did you feel guilty about that though? Like you're studying this and now you're like, you're part of your own study in some way?
I was just so in such a dark space mentally, and I was so heartbroken from so many things, without the right tools to actually move forward, and without the will, to be very honest, to move forward, because I think in recovering from anything, right, from anything, you need to at least have that willingness, which gives you then the willpower to get better. But I just was like, fuck it, I don't even want to attempt right now. I just want to indulge in like the darkest, and like I just want to choose the easy way out, which is going down that path. And it was just so dark. That's the only word that comes to mind, because I was so in my own shit, and I think people, I mean, I am aware that I have quite a that I have a personality, and that I can be quite, what's the word, like, if I'm set on something, it's that way.
Yeah, just headstrong, determined.
Exactly. So even if people were, trying to maybe bring me back to reason, it's like, no, I'm going to Mexico. I'm going to backpack by myself, and whatever happens, happens. And let me tell you, like, straight up, the intention was not to come back. The intention was really not to come back. And this is dark once again, but my plan was to travel from Mexico, go all the way down Central America, arrive in Colombia, and then overdose on cocaine in Colombia, and die. That was my plan. That
Uh,
was my plan.
well, one, yeah, I was just gonna say, just thank you for sharing. I know that's a tough thing probably to say out loud, but thank you for sharing that. And yeah, we're just amazing to go on this journey with you. How- you stop in Mexico. I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off there. Where does it? Yeah, where does it go from there? How do you
So
not go through with it?
from Mexico, it gets even darker, because when you're in that spiral, there's no limit, right? There's no limit. Just like how when you're in the light and when you're in the personal development spiral upwards, there's no limit. Like, it's just insights
Yeah,
all the
right.
so in the other side, it's the same. And I went deep and I went dark, and the quantities of drugs got bigger, the quantities of everything got bigger, the destruction, the physical health also went just plummeting. And then obviously, you attract the people that you're like. And so I attracted this guy into my life, and basically 6 months after I had canceled my wedding in France, I was in a new relationship with this guy who, um I don't like labels, and I don't give off labels easily, because I have studied these subjects. But he was really like a clinically diagnosed narcissist and a
Mm.
psychopath. And he actually even told me that. And at the time, since I was so messed up in my mind, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a great story. Like, I'm so down for this. I'm
Right.
so
You're
down
like,
for
this is
this.
gonna be a great story. He's like, I have giant red flags. You're like, sweet. This is gonna be a great
Yeah.
story to tell somebody one day.
Exactly. And we embarked on this journey together, where we actually traveled all of Mexico and Central America. And like, I haven't shared a lot about this yet, of some of the details of this thing, of this relationship, but we fucked shit up. First of all, it was fun, I'm not gonna lie, it was fun, but it was also one of the most toxic relationships I have ever been in. It was so abusive, it was so painful, it
Mhm.
was so like soul crushing and destroying, and it was just a mix of my own addictions with his shit and his psychopathy and like my own, like, oh my god, it was like, honestly, it felt like two meteorites just like collided and just like, it was the big bang. And
Right.
yeah, and people that know me and know the story, they don't believe me, or they don't understand how I can say the following, that I genuinely don't hate this man. Have forgiven him for a lot of the things that have happened. And I found a space in my heart where I can actually love him. Like, not from a space of like romantic love, just from a space of like, this man is so sick, or was so sick at the time, that all I have right now is love for these types of people, because they're just so unwell. But anyways, I'm getting sidetracked.
Well, one, I want to say that's absolutely incredible, though. Like, I really want to dive into, I want to let you keep telling your story, but how do you find this love and this peace with them? When obviously things were so bad between you two, and he was probably terrible to you in so many ways. How do you find this forgiveness? Yeah, I kind of want to. I mean, I want to jump all over the place because you said so many just kind of jaw dropping things, and it sounds so terrible. But I can understand where you're coming from. But I'm seeing you now, and I don't see any of this. I don't see that person. I see someone who's wonderful and enlightened and cares about life and cares about their own health and cares about others. Like, how do you get there?
So I'll fast forward. When this whole relationship ended up coming to an end, I had gone sober again, which is quite paradoxical, because he actually brought me to the pits of fucking despair, but he also helped me get sober again. So it was a bit of like this conundrum. But anyways, when I got sober again, and we, broke things off, and it took a very long time for us to actually disconnect. But I was back in that mindset, and this time I was like, listen, like, you really got to get this life thing right this time, because I was burnt out on life at this point. I was so tired, I was just exhausted, and I said, I don't know if I have it in me to actually get better. I was really depressed.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, a lot.
I told myself, I'm going to give myself like one last year. I remember this. I promised myself, I said, one more year, just to try and get better with all the resources I had. And like, just frankly speaking, I had burned quite a lot of my money. Not even my money, it was my dad's money that I got from his inheritance. And I blew most of it away, because I was planning on dying, in Mexico and shit. So I like just fucking blew all that cash away. So
Oh,
the
no.
little that I had left, I said, I'm going to use it on therapy and actually like really giving this life thing a chance. So once again, I was like, okay, 1 year. If I still feel like this in a year, I'm going to kill myself. But this time I'm sober, and I'm telling myself this again.
Mhm.
And I gave it my all. Like, I really, really gave it my all. And for me, it went through a very rigid structure at first, in the sense, like, I had to impose discipline on myself, like no one's ever imposed discipline on myself. So the 5 a.m. wake up call, the 5K running, listening to one podcast every day, reading every day, meditating, journaling, like, and I had a physical paper that I would, tick the X's off, and very strict on my food, cold showers, all of that stuff. And
Wow.
then, I was also doing therapy. Um, and then, once you start investing in yourself, I'm not only talking about money, but just time, energy, and this desire to get better.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like life kind of automatically continues opening doors for you, saying like, hey, like, we got you, this is life speaking, it's not death. Like, here's more of life. And I ended
Right.
up, this is just fucking wild. I end up, so long story short, I was living in Greece at the time. So I had moved to Greece and I was in Athens. And that
Wow.
whole life,
Yeah, okay, Mexico to Athens now, and then you're having this awake, which is like so poetic in so many ways with all of these Stoic philosophers and also like all these incredible stories that we still have, right? Like the Odyssey and Roman and Greek mythology. So it feels very poetic that you are having this reawakening of life there.
yeah, yeah. And I remember, I think I turned 27 or 28 over there. I can't remember, but I had this shift. I think I turned 28. I had this shift in me where I was like, what am I doing with my life? Why am I in Athens? Why am I in Greece? Like, I want to go to South America. And so guess what? I
Wow.
end up going back. Not only, well, I ended up going first to Panama because I hadn't visited Panama yet. And then from Panama, I ended up going to Colombia, the place where I wanted to die, right? The place where I wanted to overdose on cocaine and die.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up going to Colombia sober as fuck and actually living there for a year. And I started a project there, I started a business, and I also went on such a deep, deep healing journey in Colombia with plant medicine. And that's where the major shift happened. That's where, like, the person that you see today, I mean, obviously it's a lot of things, but it was that 1 year in Colombia that really, really shifted a lot of things for me. And actually I wrote a book on it, which is I think it's on my Instagram and it's in my link tree also. I wrote a book about that year in Colombia because it was so transformative. And it was, yeah, it was just, it was everything I needed. So just to summarize, the answer to your question, I gave myself everything I could possibly think of. Therapy, I went back to AA, discipline, podcasts, books, whatever it took. And then plant medicine is a part of my journey. It's a very big part of my journey. I don't know if you're familiar with like ayahuasca and all of these different things.
Yeah, yeah. I've never done it, but I there's a lot of podcasters, creators, and business owners that I actually look up to, and they've talked about their journeys and how they were enlightened by it, and it changed their perspective on the world and their life. Is that kind of what you experienced too? And could you do you attribute it to all those different things, or is it specifically the plant medicine?
Um, I have to give credit to all the different things, but I must say that the plant medicine, that was what accelerated a lot of my growth, my spiritual growth, everything. But then again, just a little disclosure, I didn't just do one ceremony of ayahuasca, because I still have this addict brain. I ended up doing a lot of different ceremonies, a lot of different plant medicines, a lot of different modalities in a
Mhm.
very short period of time. Completely lost my mind, as in like completely and utterly lost my fucking mind, and then came back to sanity. So it's like
Wow.
one extreme to another. But then, yeah, then all of that made it such that I am the person that I am today. And I mean, honestly, I could go on for hours about plant medicine because the stuff that also happened in these ceremonies and the things you witness and the things you feel, it's like, wow. But
Yeah.
that's also where I finally touched on the tsunami and ended up realizing how that actually impacted like all of my life. And then everything has been just making sense. Everything's been making sense basically since I started doing plant medicine, which was in what, 2023? Was it 2023? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
What did
and
you
everything just,
Yeah, I mean, that's so incredible. And it obviously is paid off and it worked for you. What did you discover? If you could summarize it, what did you discover using that plant medicine about your trauma that gave you peace, that allowed you to move on?
whew. So I feel like okay, regardless, or okay, like plant medicine or not plant medicine, the one thing that I have learned from all of that, and the reason why I say this is because I don't want people to think that plant medicine is the solution to everything.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a great point to make. It's like, it worked for you, but doesn't mean that's necessarily going to just work for everybody. It's not like a catch-all.
Exactly. Because people do say, and I do believe this, that like one ayahuasca ceremony is like 10 years of therapy. I do vouch for that. However, it's not just what happens in the ceremony, because that ceremony is going to impact you for the rest of your life. So it's not a one-time thing. It's a very long process. But anyways, getting back to the question, I actually understood that the tsunami, the lessons that I got from that, it was all about control and letting go. So the way that the trauma from the tsunami actually affected me was that it made me so fearful of losing control, because I was in a situation with zero control.
Right.
Absolutely zero control. Right.
Yep. I get
and
that.
so for the rest of my life, I ended up being in this control dynamic, which I still have today. And I probably will always have for the rest of my life. But now I've learned to cope with it better, and, not like, just to cope with it better. And not only was it around control and letting go, which is the main theme, but, the fact that I was with my father, who was supposed to be the protector, the provider, all of that, and wasn't able to fulfill that role in that moment of time, because there was nothing else he could do. I mean, he did the best he could, but it's just the subconscious mind, how it internalized it was that protective father figure didn't protect me, but he did the best he could. And so on top of the control and letting go stuff, I had this relationship, I guess, with men, where it was like, I was always seeking to be protected and provided for, always seeking for a father figure, but also had a lot of the abandonment and rejection issues come up, not only from the divorce, from the tsunami, from a lot of other stuff that happened in during my teenage years, where my dad was actually inappropriate with me, which is another trauma that I didn't touch upon on this podcast. But yeah, that was also a part of it. Mm-hmm. And then when my dad died, it was like, that was the finale of the abandonment issues, because he literally fucking left Earth, right?
Yeah.
So it's I realized all of these big insights. Let's say it got accelerated, at least with plant medicine and therapy and all of that stuff, where I was like, wow, okay, this is the underlying shit that I have, and addictions is often control, right? Because it's like, I loved the lack of control that I had when I was super fucked up, but it still has to do with controlling, letting go. So
right.
All of those things came through that year in Colombia. And, it's one thing to have this information, but like processing it and working on it with it is a lot, because it's big stuff, man. It's deep, it's not just like, oh yeah, I realized it was this, or it's like, this has been shaping my whole entire life. Yeah. And so now I have to be mindful of these things for the rest of my life. So
yeah, it's like, yeah, no, not at all. You build these systems, right? Your brain, you get in these habits, and then you cope with things the way you cope with. And then this thing happens, and you realize, like, these systems of operating my life, they don't work anymore. And they're actually destructive for me. And I can't like just keep doing this and expect a different result. And what I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like, it allowed you to kind of break through that and then question, is there a different way I can go about this? And then also, you also were moving towards the trauma and the pain and the suffering. Like, you were moving towards this part that's hard. And I think that's what, whether people think like therapy is useless, it's not going to work for me, whatever. At least for me, what it's done is work towards that hard thing, that trauma, and be like, I'm not going to run away from it. I'm not going to try to avoid it. I'm not going to try to find a bridge over it. Like, I'm just going to move through it, and I'm going to feel everything I feel, and it's going to be hard. But I think that's where the true beauty of therapy is. And it sounds from like the medicinal drugs, or what am I trying to say, with that plant medicine that you're using, it kind of forced you to look at this pain and trauma and be like, all right, if we moved through this, didn't avoid it, didn't try to run away from it, didn't try to crush it or put it in this ball, if I literally just moved through it, I might find a healthier way and just a more peaceful way to live life. And I just commend you on that bravery, because especially it makes a ton of sense why, you'd use drugs and alcohol. It lowers people's inhibition. It allows you to be freer. It makes you not necessarily worry about the control. And so, yeah, I just think it's beautiful that you kept challenging yourself to keep going towards, my therapist likes to say meaningful suffering. Like we have suffering, we're always going to suffer in some way, it's traffic or, it's work or, there's things at your job, but then there's meaningful suffering where you move towards a healthier version of you, where I think what you're doing now is beautiful with running. It's like, it's hard. It doesn't always feel great. It doesn't always feel fun. You're going to feel pain. And yet, the results are better for you at the end. You're healthier. You feel freer. You are able to express these pent up feelings and emotions. I just want to talk more about you. You have this amazing awakening and journey. How do you start putting the pieces together to be where you are now and work through this and be on this journey of helping others and sharing your wisdom and sharing this book and doing a podcast? What do you discover here?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. First of all, it's we hear this we often hear this, right? That the only way out is through, and that's what you also summed up pretty nicely. And the older I get, the more I realize there really is no shortcut. There are no shortcuts in life. And the sooner that people understand that, the sooner things actually get easier, right? I wish I understood that sooner. But this was just the journey that I had to go on. And so, you know, yeah, sometimes you just got to look at exactly where you don't want to look and just accept it at the end of the day. And like acceptance, there is this passage in the big book of AA, it's a literature book, um, which would just talk about acceptance is the key to all my problems, because that's it at the end of the day, right? Like I can try and um lie to myself and say that, oh, well, this didn't happen, or it wasn't so bad, or I'm not that bad, or this and that. But the reality is until I accept and I'm honest with myself, I don't need to be honest with you guys. Like, let me be honest with myself first, check in with myself first, see where I'm at first. That's where it actually all starts. But the thing is, though, I didn't know how to be honest with myself. I didn't know because for so long I had been numb. I
Yeah,
had been
yeah.
numbing myself. And yeah, I'm not blaming anyone for this, but I do also believe that like parenting plays a big role in this, because if things were done a little different from maybe my parents' point of view, I maybe wouldn't have gone down the hardships that I went through. But then again, I wouldn't also be the person that I am today. And sorry, remind me your question. I'm like all over the place.
No, no, I think it's wonderful. And I think I can see you discovering things too. And I think that's a beautiful place to be, especially as we're always figuring it out. It's like, I trust you so much from like the content you put out and you as a coach, like I do. But I also love the fact that it seems like you're discovering something here. And I think that's wonderful. But it's how do you then take all of these lessons and then start putting into practice and then to get where you are now as an author, as a podcaster, as a coach? Like, yeah, how do you get there? You go on this again medical journey, medicinal plant medicine journey, and then it's like, yeah, how do you just evolve here? Because it's just, yeah. And I know that's such a big question. And I know, thank you so much. I know it's a late night in Spain and you got to get going. But yeah, if you could kind of summarize it in like a few thoughts, how do you think you get from that to now where you are?
Well, first of all, I mean, on this long journey of healing, I've understood. I choose to believe that I didn't go through everything for nothing, right? And the more that I go through, the more I believe that those are gifts for something, right? And so I have a plethora of lessons and insights and breakthroughs and wisdom, not only from my own life experience, but like from plant medicine. Because with plant medicine, you depending on how open you are, you can go to like really different realms and like download types of different information from different things,
Mm-hmm.
without wanting to sound too woo-woo.
Right. You're like escaping from the matrix, if I could say
Yeah, no,
that. Yeah.
and it's just like, how could you not? It's selfish, and this is my opinion. It's selfish for me to keep all of this wisdom and all of these insights for myself. I really believe that. And I believe that people that have gone through hardships in life, if they are not doing something useful with that to help humanity, to help others, I'm not saying go on social media or like, blow up on, no, I mean, help one person, like just be a kinder individual. I'm not saying also be a coach or whatever. I'm just saying like do whatever you can, but at least to transmute all of that something into helping other people in whatever way, shape, or form that may look like. But I feel like it's selfish if I don't do that, because like let's just say hypothetically God or the universe has used me, has put me through all of that so that I am the person today, but I don't put it to work. It's like, well, what the fuck? Like, I
What was the
have all
point?
these gifts.
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah, what's the point? So sooner or later, I feel like your purpose or your calling or your mission or whatever kind of just gets clarified. And even if it doesn't get clarified, we have to at some point make meaning of stuff and pick a route to go, a road to go down.
Right.
And like I said, if I choose to believe that I went through everything for nothing, I'm not. It's just not possible. It's just not possible, because no human being could go through that amount of pain and suffering just for nothing.
Right.
And I respect people who are able to just say like, yeah, no, I went through this, but it doesn't affect me, and they go through their lives. But I can almost guarantee, that life will push you back on some kind of path for you to share what you go through with others, because it's I don't know, I don't want to get too much into the spiritual stuff, because then I'm going to sound like a like a crazy person. But
Yeah. No, it's what speaks to you though, and I think I understand, again, don't let me put words in your mouth, but it's like, I agree with you. You eventually, especially when you've been as stripped down to the core of who you are, as I think both of us have, but just hearing your story, and I've felt very much like I wanted to give up on life too. But it's like once you feel like that, you're like, I don't know if I have the will to live anymore. And you're so low, you really start lining up things in your life in this way where you're like, I have to live through some kind of purpose. And it sounds like you have found that purpose. Again, some people just are born with it, I'm sure. And then some people it's trial by fire, and you figure it out as you start piecing your life together. And it sounds like you've pieced together this amazing life now off some really terrible roads that you've had to travel down. And it's put you on this better, wonderful, beautiful path. And I think, I just kind of look up to you in that way. And I also feel like, I feel like I'm getting that from you. Whether, whether we can explain it from like a metaphysical level or like a spiritual level or a different plane, it's like there's some type of compulsion there where it's like, I have to share this. I have to give this out to other people in the world. Otherwise, what I went through doesn't mean as much. And so I completely get that.
exactly. Yeah, and I thank you for that. And I just want to take this one step further, because now, okay, on my path of coaching and of my podcast, and okay, fine, I published a book and all that stuff. It's how to say, the ego can overtake quite often, because don't get me wrong, like there was like last year or maybe 2 years ago, I got caught up in the Instagram game. I was like with the followers and the likes and the views and all that. And then my podcast, I was like, oh, why am I not getting more listeners? And then my book, I was like, why am I not making more sales? And it's just like it is easy to, well, at least it has been for me, to get caught up in all of this stuff and I forget, like, whoa, like, wait. You're getting worried because of like the number of likes or followers you're getting, but can we just take a moment of gratitude to remember like the journey you've been on,
Right.
And it's just I feel like saying that, life takes a different sort of game after let's say, a spiritual awakening, or after enlightenment, or whatever you want to put, like whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Because now it's like, really, okay, how do I integrate all of that into this human experience, into like showing up for others, but doing it from the heart, not getting caught up into the matrix whatever game. Because we mustn't forget that money is a thing, right? Money is what like keeps us, I mean, feeds us and all that shit. And now that I've shifted into this world of like, okay, my purpose, I know what my purpose is, to help other people, and I have a few platforms and channels to do it through, but it's not providing me with the resources I need for my lifestyle. So it's like, wait, I'm a little confused here. Like, what is happening? And then there's the whole attachment to money, to the 3D that kicks in, and it's like, wait, maybe that is not my purpose, and it gets all confusing. So I just feel like highlighting, that it's everything is a journey. It's not just because, or at least for me, it's not just because, okay, I did the hard work, and now I'm doing good, that all of a sudden it's easy. I mean, I right now I'm in a very interesting situation, and I had never expected to be in this situation, but it's another life lesson that I'm going through. Just, the difference is that I'm not gonna get into victim mindset right now. It's like, okay, I are you familiar with the hero's journey?
I mean, I feel like I've heard it, but yeah, I don't know. How would you describe it?
It's simply put is that it's very simply put is that we're constantly going to be going on heroes' journeys through life. Okay, so you're the hero, and all of a sudden you're cruising through life, and then you have an opponent that comes through, like a villain or whatever. And actually, you have to start fighting that person, right? But the mindset shift is that this opponent is here to teach you something. Is here to teach you something. He's a worthy opponent. So you go through the battle, you go through the hardships, you fight and whatever. Then you come out of that victorious, you learn the lessons, and then you live happily ever after until the next time, until it's another time to level up, and you're going to go on another hero's journey. And are you familiar with the Wizard of Oz?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I just saw Wicked too.
Oh, well, there's big symbolic actually in the Wizard of Oz and in the hero's journey. Dorothy, I think, is her name.
Yep.
Who goes down the yellow brick road, and there's like all these different people that come on her journey, and the tornado, and then she clicks her feet, and then she comes back home, right? And what is home? It's a return to self. That's it. It's returning to self at the end of the day. And so I feel like everything that we've been through is at the end of the day just for us to return to who we actually are and remember who we actually are. And who we are beings of light and love, and here to spread kindness and help other people on their journey to remembering who they are. Whoa, I don't know where that came from.
I know. That was definitely like a clip worthy right there. Dang. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that was beautifully put. I don't think I could say it any better. And I just appreciate hearing your story today and your journey, you leaving Oz, returning home to this wonderful, beautiful, inspiring place. You're incredible. Before we wrap up, though, I want to ask you just a couple questions really quick. And one thing that comes up for me is like currently where you're at. What gives you the most peace?
You know what? I what gives me the most peace is reminding myself, or at least choosing to believe that I chose this, that we're souls having a human experience, and that I chose this at the end of the day. I chose to come here to earth. I chose to incarnate in this physical body that looks like this. I chose my parents. I chose all of that. And um, that gives me peace because, on one hand, I know this is temporary and it's not going to last forever, this life stuff. But I'm not saying it in the morbid, dark way that I used to say it before. I'm saying it now in the sense like, let me enjoy this. Let me really play on earth and like enjoy, the fruits of earth, and, the food that we get, and the amazing people that we get to connect with, and, the nature, and the this and the that, and the feelings we get to feel. Because once we go back to wherever we come from, once we die, we don't get to feel, we don't get to play this game. And so
Right.
that gives me peace. It's just reminding me that this is not that it doesn't matter, but it's just a blip, in humanity.
Yeah, it's so temporary. Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful. I love it. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful sentiment in so many ways. One of my last questions for you, though, is if somebody else is experiencing their lowest moment, their darkest time, what one piece of advice would you give them so that they can start moving out of that situation?
It would be too easy to say everything is temporary, this too shall pass, blah, blah, blah. Like,
All the platitudes and all that.
yeah,
Yeah.
all the quotes, we've heard all the quotes. But if there's one thing that I can say, it would be such a good question. Um,
Where's your mind going? Because I see it going in a million different directions. Like, yeah, where's your mind going
yeah,
right now?
there's this mantra that comes to my mind. It's something that I repeat often, and it says, "All I need is within me now. All I need is within me now." I always tell myself that all I need is within me now, and it's true because our brains, our minds, it can be our biggest fucking problems, right? Like this shit almost killed me so many times, right? It wanted to take me down. It wanted to be like, no, let's go, let's end this.
Hmm.
But on the flip side, it can also be the biggest solution to everything. So everything really comes from within, and external circumstances, they it's one, they're a reflection of your internal like state.
Yeah.
It's we really have the power to change anything in our lives. Like that would probably be the one thing. It would be that you have the power in the fraction of a second to change your whole entire life. And this can be in the dark, as in like I could jump out the window right now and that's it. Sorry, that was very dark. But it can also be just like extremely light in the sense like, okay, fuck it, let me buy that ticket right now to go to Venezuela or to go to Hawaii, and let me just go and change my entire life. Let me go propose to my girlfriend. Let me go sign up for that course I wanted to do. Let me go sign up at like your life can change in the fraction of a second, and it's the moments of decision that shape our destiny. That is the key phrase. It's the moments of decision that shape our destiny. So if anyone's going through such a hard time, like everything you need is within yourself, first of all. Sure, coaches, therapists, rehab, all of that necessary, yes, but it's all going to come from within you at the end of the day. And the second thing is that, a decision, it doesn't have to be an action. A decision is something you make up in here.
Hmm.
Action comes after. But when you decide something, your whole life changes. And that's all you got to do is make a decision. That's it.
That is amazing. I feel so inspired. And yeah, in so many ways, I can agree with you. I think that was just so beautifully put. It has been such an amazing conversation with you. I'm so happy we connected, that the social media, spirits, gods, whatever, put us together, because I just love this journey. I love the way you look at life. I love the way you describe things. It's been incredible. Where can people find you? Where can they support you? And where can they find the book?
Thank you. Thank you so much for those kind words. You know what? The easiest way to reach me is probably on Instagram, Christelle.Ambr, AMBR. And then on there's my link tree with, my book, my podcast, all of that. My website also is linked there. Like I'm not here to try and sell myself and be like, oh, like, you should do coaching with me. No, like, no. But I do want to say that I'm genuinely interested in human beings. Like you guys fascinate me. I mean, I love humans. And so if anyone resonated with anything and wants to chat about anything, I will not, I'm just here. I'm here as a human to help another human being. So like, don't hesitate to connect. If anything resonated, if you have questions or anything, like I always want to be accessible. That is one thing about me that people don't like to hear. My friends are like, oh, you shouldn't be accessible. But it's like, no, because there's been too many kind people on earth that have helped me when I was in tough times. So I want to pass it on. So it's like, if anyone needs anything, just like reach out. I'm just a message away. I'm just a message away.
Oh, man. That's so incredible. You are just tremendous. You are a light. I see it in you. I'm so thankful that I know you. I get to call you a friend. Thank you so much for chatting with us today. And yeah, I'm so thankful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me as a guest. Thank you for the space. Thank you for the wonderful insights again from you. And yeah, thank you. I'm so grateful for you. Really, I'm so grateful, and I can't wait for more of this.
We'll definitely do more in the future, that's for sure. Thank you for tuning into today's episode of the Sick Burn Podcast. It was a joy to have Ambr with us, sharing her transformative journey and the insights she's gained through her absolutely wild life. If you enjoyed our conversation, please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who could use a little inspiration. Follow us on all the social channels at SickBurnPod to stay up to date on upcoming episodes, weekly inspiration, and behind-the-scenes content. Join us next time as we continue to explore more incredible stories of overcoming adversity and finding the bright side of life's darkest moments. Until then, keep finding the light in the dark. Aloha.